My own mother said it like she was asking about the weather. Since you don't have kids or a mortgage, you can cover $10,000 for Dylan's wedding, right? The same parents who still owe me 32 grand looked at me like I should be grateful for the chance. My brother laughed, flashing his new watch paid for with my loan. I didn't argue. I just smiled, slid my phone onto the table, and hit record. A minute later, the knock at the door made them jump. They had no idea who I'd invited or how fast their little system was about to collapse. Before we get into it, hit like and tell me where you're watching from Ever Been the Family's Emergency Fund. I grew up believing love meant sacrifice. When I was 16, I worked weekends at a diner off Maple Street, saving tips in a cracked mason jar labeled Family Fund. My mom would pat my hand every Sunday and say, "You're such a good girl, Claire. You understand responsibility." I thought that meant love. I didn't realize it meant obedience. The habit never stopped. Birthdays, promotions, tax refunds, every extra dollar went somewhere else. Mom's credit card debt, Dad's truck payment, Dylan's business venture that turned into a trip to Cabo. They called it helping family. I called it keeping the peace. The one time I hesitated, Mom's face fell so fast I panicked. "We'd do it for you," she said softly. That was her favorite lie. On paper, we looked perfect. A neat house in the suburbs, Sunday dinners, framed graduation photos, hung in matching silver frames. But under that polish, every meal was a transaction. The dining table wasn't for sharing, it was for negotiations. Dad had a way of clearing his throat before any request. I used to tense up at the sound. Mom would pour wine first, pretending it was casual. Dylan, the golden child, would arrive late, toss his keys on the counter, and grin like he was doing us a favor by showing up. He'd talk about his next investment, about Hawaii, about his fiance's designer gown, while I quietly passed the mashed potatoes. There were times I caught my reflection in the silverware and barely recognized myself. Tired eyes, polite smile, the dependable daughter who never said no. The one who kept receipts in labeled envelopes but never dared to use them. Because in this family, bringing up money meant betrayal. Still, part of me kept hoping they'd see me. Not as their lender, but as their daughter. The one who used to draw crayon cards for them, who still showed up with casseroles and hugs. That illusion finally cracked 6 months ago in the dentist's parking lot. I was shaking from pain, holding the estimate for emergency surgery, $3,000 due immediately. My savings were gone, drained by years of temporary loans. When I called Mom, my voice was breaking. "I just need help until payday," I said. She sighed like I was a stranger asking for a favor. "Oh, honey, we're a little tight. Can't you put it on a credit card?" I remember staring at my rearview mirror, watching my own face twist between disbelief and shame. 2 days later, Dylan posted a photo of his new BMW in their driveway. Mom commented, "So proud of you, sweetheart." That was the moment I realized the truth. I'd avoided my whole life. My love had never been enough. Only my money had. Still, I didn't stop hoping things could change. Because that's what people like me do. We keep showing up even when the door keeps closing. But the next time I knocked, I wasn't bringing cash. I was bringing consequences. 2 weeks after that call, Mom's tone changed again. Warm, sugary, dangerous. "We're having a little family dinner on Sunday," she said. "Nothing fancy, just a few of us talking wedding plans. You'll come, right?" I almost said yes out of habit, but something in her voice made me pause. "Sure," I said slowly. "Who's coming?" "Oh, just close family," she replied quickly, "and a few people helping Dylan and Emily plan things." That Sunday, I scrolled through Instagram while microwaving leftovers alone in my apartment. The first photo hit like a slap. My parents, Dylan, his fiancée, her parents all smiling at a long table under soft lights. The caption read, "Family dinner wedding plans coming together." I stared at it for a long minute, my fork halfway to my mouth. Close family. That's what she'd said. I typed a quick text. "What dinner is this?" Her reply came seconds later. "Oh, sweetheart, it was just for those directly involved in planning." Directly involved. I let out a dry laugh. So I was useful enough to fund the event, but not important enough to be invited. It might have ended there, but humiliation has a way of multiplying. The next week was the 4th of July barbecue in our neighborhood, the one Mom loved hosting because it made her look generous. I brought my potato salad and that same obedient smile ready to keep the peace. But peace isn't what they wanted. By the grill, I heard her voice floating through the chatter. "We're worried about Claire," she said to Mrs. Campbell and two neighbors, tone dripping with pity. "She's having a hard time financially. That's why she couldn't help with Dylan's bachelor party." My hand froze mid-scoop. She was lying so smoothly you'd think she believed it. "She's always been bad with money, bless her heart," Mom added. "We try to guide her, but she just doesn't listen." The women nodded their eyes, turning toward me, soft, judgmental, full of fake sympathy. My chest burned. I set down the bowl before it slipped from my hands. The truth was, I hadn't paid for that bachelor party because I was still digging out from the dental bill the one she'd refused to help with. For the first time, I didn't go inside to clean up or offer dessert. I just left. Drove home in silence with fireworks flashing red and white in my rearview mirror like the world was celebrating my breaking point. That night, Dad called. His voice was heavy, rehearsed. "Your grandma's medical bills are piling up," he said. "If you can't help family, who can you help? Just 3,000 Claire." The guilt stabbed hard, but something in his tone didn't sit right. The next morning, I drove an hour to visit Grandma at her retirement community. She looked up from her crossword puzzle, bright-eyed as ever. "Medical bills," she repeated, confused. "Oh no, dear. My insurance covers everything." For a moment, the world went silent. Then it hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. I went home, pulled out the shoebox of receipts I'd kept for years, and began lining them across the floor. Dates, amounts, signatures. My so-called family's history spelled out in ink. I opened a new spreadsheet on my laptop and typed 3 words at the top. "They owe me." And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. The next few nights, I barely slept. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of my laptop fan and the shuffle of papers. Receipts, transfer screenshots, text messages, every thank you that had come with a hidden knife. I arranged them chronologically, watching a pattern form like a stain spreading across fabric. 11 years of giving 11 years of being used. By Friday, I had a binder thick enough to rival a case file. Maybe that's why I called Sophie. We'd been friends in college before life drifted us apart. She'd gone into law and I'd gone into teaching 2 different kinds of caretaking. When she answered, her voice was sharp as ever. "Claire." "It's been ages. I think I'm in trouble," I said quietly. "Financial trouble," she asked. "Family trouble," I corrected. I told her everything, the loans, the manipulation, the fake medical bills. By the time I finished, my throat ached. Sophie was silent for a long time before saying, "What they're doing isn't just unethical, it's abuse." The word hit like a slap. Abuse. I'd spent years thinking of myself as too sensitive, too dramatic. "Is there anything I can do?" I asked. Her tone shifted. "Oh, there's a lot you can do, but first we document everything legally." Over the next week, Sophie helped me file affidavits, organize bank statements, and record new phone calls. Every time Mom or Dad reached out, I let it ring 3 times before answering and hit record. Each conversation sounded the same guilt pressure, the word family wielded like a weapon. Then came the text that turned everything from insult to war. From Mom, great news. "We've put you down for $8,000 toward Dylan's honeymoon. The travel agent needs it by Friday. We know teaching doesn't pay much, but family sacrifices for family." I stared at it, feeling the heat rise behind my eyes. I showed it to Sophie the next day in her office. She shook her head slowly. "They're escalating. They think they still own you." She typed something fast on her computer. "Let's check your credit," she murmured. A few clicks later, she froze. "Claire? Did you open a credit card 5 years ago under an account ending in 7439? "No," I said immediately. Her face hardened. "Your brother did." The screen showed charges from luxury stores, flight tickets, and missed payments, all under my name. My credit score had been quietly bleeding for years. I felt my stomach drop, but Sophie's calm steadied me. "This is identity theft," she said, "and I promise you we can prove it." For the first time, I wasn't scared. I was angry, clean, sharp anger, the kind that clears the fog. That night, Dad called again. "We need to talk about your attitude," he said, his voice hard. "Sunday dinner. Be there." When I hung up, I didn't hesitate. I forwarded the message to Sophie. Her reply came seconds later. "Perfect. Let's make it a family meeting they'll never forget." Sunday came dressed like any other quiet afternoon sunlight spilling through my blinds, the smell of detergent from the laundry next door, but inside me, everything was still. No fear, no guilt, just resolve. Sophie pulled up in front of my apartment right on time. She wore a charcoal blazer and carried the black briefcase that had terrified more people than any weapon could. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. Been ready for 11 years. The drive to my parents' house felt shorter than it ever had, maybe because every mile peeled away another layer of obedience. By the time we turned into their familiar cul-de-sac, I wasn't the same daughter who used to sit quietly through their lectures. I was the woman they'd built and broken, and now the woman coming to collect. Mom's house looked perfect as always. White porch swing, fresh hydrangeas, the smell of cinnamon potpourri floating through the open window. The same setting for every emotional ambush. I could almost hear her voice echoing, "Smile, Claire. Family sees everything." We stepped onto the porch. I didn't knock. Inside, they were waiting like judges behind a long, invisible bench. Mom perched on her armchair, hands clasped in saintly patience. Dad stood near the fireplace posture, rigid. Dylan lounged on the couch, scrolling his phone, wearing that same watch he bought with my loan. Mom broke the silence first. "You're late, sweetheart. I brought someone with me." I said, my tone calm, almost kind. Dad frowned. "This is a family meeting." "Exactly," I said, opening the door wider. Sophie stepped in. The click of her heels on the hardwood sounded louder than thunder. The air changed tight electric. "Who is this?" Mom asked, her voice sharp now. "This is Sophie Tran," I said evenly, "my attorney." For a second, no one breathed. Mom laughed, a shaky, nervous sound. "Claire, what on earth?" "She's here," I interrupted, "to discuss the $32,000 you owe me plus interest, and the fraudulent credit card opened under my name." Dylan's phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the floor. "That's ridiculous," Dad barked. "You're suing your own family." "I'm holding them accountable," I said. "There's a difference." Sophie placed the briefcase on the coffee table and opened it with a soft metallic click. Inside were neatly labeled folders. She began laying them out one by one: loan agreements, text screenshots, bank transfers, voice transcripts. "These are legally binding promissory notes signed by Marianne and Frank Monroe," she said clearly. "And here, bank statements proving the funds left Ms. Monroe's account and entered yours. Additionally, here's evidence of a credit card in her name opened and used by Mr. Dylan Monroe." Mom's hand flew to her chest. "We didn't mean those were just family notes." "The court doesn't see them that way," Sophie said smoothly, "especially not after reviewing the recordings." "Recordings?" Dylan's voice cracked. I met his eyes. Every call, every message. "You said it yourself. Families help families. I just helped us all remember how." Dad's face reddened. "You're destroying this family, Claire." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed it when you treated me like an ATM." For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner. Then Sophie pulled one last folder from her case and slid it forward. "As of this morning, a court order has frozen your joint accounts pending investigation." Dad's mouth opened, then closed again. Mom let out a strangled sob. "You froze our accounts. We can't even pay for Dylan's wedding now." Sophie's tone stayed professional. "Financial abuse is a crime, Mrs. Monroe. Consider this an opportunity to reflect on priorities." Dylan shot up, pacing. "This is insane. You think you can ruin our lives because of some old paperwork. You did that yourself," I said. "You used my name to open credit. That's fraud." His voice rose. "It was a mistake," I stood up. "No, Dylan. A mistake is forgetting a birthday card. This was theft, and you knew exactly what you were doing." The rage in his eyes faltered, replaced by fear. That was new. That was power. Mom tried one last time. Claire, please. We're family. You don't have to go through with this. I looked at her. Really looked. The woman who'd taught me that love meant debt. The woman who'd said, we'd do the same for you, but never did. You're right, I said softly. I don't have to. But I will. Sophie gathered her documents, snapped the briefcase shut, and nodded to me. We'll be in touch within 30 days for payment arrangements, she said formally. If restitution isn't made, we'll proceed with litigation. We turned toward the door. Behind me, chairs scraped, voices cracked, Mom crying, Dad muttering curses, Dylan whispering, "What are we going to do?" under his breath. I didn't turn around. Outside, the air felt lighter, cleaner. Sophie looked at me as we reached the car. You okay? I exhaled slowly. I think so. What's that feel like? I glanced back at the house one last time, like breathing for the first time. 3 months later, the judgment came through. Full repayment plus interest. Dylan pleaded down on the credit card fraud, but the penalty still hit hard restitution financial counseling and a stain on his record that no apology could erase. The Hawaii wedding evaporated into a local country club ceremony no one attended. Mom texted once, "You've torn this family apart." I replied, "No, I just stopped being your bank." She never answered. The silence that followed didn't hurt. It healed. 3 months later, the check cleared. $32,000 in change, 11 years of exhaustion, reduced to neat black numbers on a bank statement. I should have felt triumphant, but what I felt was quiet. Not revenge, not rage, just peace. I used part of it for something small but symbolic, a down payment on a tiny 2-bedroom house with peeling white paint and a yard big enough for a garden. The first time I turned the key, I laughed, really laughed, because for once it was mine. Not something I bought for someone else. Grandma came to visit the next weekend. She brought cookies, asked if I was happy, and when I nodded, she squeezed my hand and said, "It's good to see you breathing easy again." That sentence stayed with me. I spent evenings planting herbs by the porch, listening to the wind move through the leaves, realizing how different silence feels when it's not made of guilt. Mom still sends the occasional text, "You'll regret this," or "We raised you better." Dad hasn't called since court. Dylan's wedding photos never appeared online. Sometimes I scroll through old pictures of us, family dinners, birthdays, fake smiles, and I almost don't recognize that girl sitting at the edge of the table, always ready to pay the bill. She looks small. She isn't me anymore. Now, when someone says family helps family, I smile politely and think, yes, but real family doesn't ask you to bleed for it. Freedom doesn't come with fireworks. It comes quietly in the sound of a door closing behind you and the calm that follows when you finally know you'll never open it again. If you've ever been the responsible one, the fixer, the one who keeps giving until there's nothing left, this story's for you. Standing up for yourself doesn't make you heartless. It makes you whole. Sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. If this story hit close to home, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. You're not alone, not anymore.